She wanted to pronounce it right away, but found it impossible. The R in Marina got stuck on the tip of her tongue, and the most that she could accomplish after a few attempts was to utter Malina, which left her very frustrated. One of the things that most amazed her was that with the same oral apparatus, human beings were capable of emitting an infinite amount of different sounds. And she, who considered herself a great imitator, could not understand why she could not pronounce the R. She asked Aguilar to pronounce her new name, time and again, and she did not take her eyes once from the friar's lips, who patiently repeated Marina again and again. It became clear to Malinali that what was needed to pronounce the R was to place her tongue behind her teeth for only a moment, but her tongue, up against her palate, as she was used to, could not move quickly enough, and the results were disastrous. It was obvious that she would need a lot of practice, but she was not ready to give in. Ever since she was a girl, she had been able to use her tongue to replicate any sound. When she was 1, she had loved to babble, to make noises and little bubbles of saliva with her mouth, to imitate any sound that she heard. She paid great attention to the songs of birds, to the barking of dogs. Surrounded by the silence of the night, she liked to discover distant noises and identify the animal that was emitting this or that sound so that she could later imitate it. Until the arrival of the Spaniards, her method of learning had been very effective, but the new language had brought to her life new and complicated challenges. Wanting to try another word so that she would not feel so frustrated, she decided to ask the friar about his God. She wanted to know everything about him, his name, his qualities, how she might approach him, to speak to him, to celebrate him, to worship him. She had loved listening to the sermon before the baptism, which Aguilar himself had translated for them, in which the Spaniards had asked that they no longer be fooled by false gods who demanded human sacrifice. They said that the true God, whom they brought with them, was good and loving and would never demand such a thing. In Malinali's eyes, that merciful God would be none other than the Lord Quetzalcoatl, who in new garments was returning to these lands to reinstate his kingdom in harmony with the cosmos. She wanted to welcome him, to speak to him. She asked the friar to teach her how to pronounce the name of their God. Aguilar kindly complied, and Malinali, overcome with emotion, realized that the word, not having any R's in it, did not present a problem at all. Malinali clapped her hands like a young child. She was delighted, thrilled by the sense of belonging that she felt when able to pronounce the name that another social group had assigned to something. It filled her with joy, for nothing disturbed her more than the feeling of being excluded. Right away, Malinali asked the friar the name of the god's wife. Aguilar told her that he had no wife. But then, who is that lady with the child in her arms whom you place in the temple? She is the mother of Christ, of Jesus Christ, who came to save us. She was a mother, the mother of them all, and so she had to be the Lady Tonantzin. It was no coincidence that when the friar had celebrated the Mass before the baptism, Malinali felt enraptured by a feeling that she could not understand. It was a sort of nostalgia for the maternal arms, a longing to feel enveloped, embraced, sustained, and protected by her mother, as at one time she must have been, by her grandmother, as she definitely had been, by Tonantzin, as she hoped she would be, and by a universal mother like that white lady who held the child in her arms. A mother who wouldn't give her away, who wouldn't let her go, who wouldn't let her fall to the ground, but would raise her to the sky, offer her to the four winds, allow her to recover her purity. All these thoughts kept her company as the Spanish priest said Mass in a language that she did not understand, but could imagine. Like Malinali, Cortés also thought about his mother and the countless times she had led him by the hand to church to pray for the health of her sickly child. She was constantly preoccupied with helping overcome his shortness, his physical weakness, and his condition as only child. It was clear that in a society dedicated to the art of war and in which street fights were common, a boy with these characteristics was destined for failure. And perhaps because of this, his parents had made sure they provided him with a good education. During the Mass, Cortés remembered the moment that he had said goodbye to his mother before leaving for the New World. He remembered her tears, her grief, and the portrait of the Virgin of Guadalupe she had given him so that she would always be with him. Cortés was sure that it was the Virgin who had saved his life after the scorpion had bitten him, and he had asked at that time that she never abandon him, that she watched over him, that she become his ally and help him triumph. He wanted to prove to his mother that he could be more than a simple page in the service of the new king. He was prepared to do anything, to disobey orders, to fight, to kill. It wasn't enough to have been Mayor of Santiago de Cuba. He wasn't troubled over having ignored the instructions of Governor Diego Velázquez, according to which it was recommended not to take risks, to treat the Indians wisely, to gather information about the secrets of that mysterious land, and to find Grijalva, who had led the previous expedition. Cortés had come on a voyage of exploration, not of conquest, with the aim of discovering, not of populating. What Velázquez expected from him was to explore the coastal regions of the Gulf and to return to Cuba with some gold as ransom, peacefully obtained. But Cortés was much more ambitious than that. If his mother could have seen him now, conquering new lands, discovering new places, naming new things, the sense of power that he felt when he gave something or someone a new name must be comparable, he imagined, to that of giving birth. The things that he named were born in that moment and began a new life because of him. The bad part of this was that at times his imagination failed him. Cortés was good at strategizing, forming alliances, conquering, but not at inventing original names. Perhaps that was why he so admired the sonority and musicality of the Mayan and Nahuatl languages. He was incapable of coming up with names like Quiahuitlán, Otalquistlan, Tlapacoyan, Iztacamachtitlan, or Pontonchan. So he searched the Spanish language to name each person and place under his power in the most conventional way possible. For example, the Totonacan village of Chalchicueyecan he renamed Veracruz, since he had arrived there on the 22nd day of April 1519, a Good Friday, the day of the true cross, la verdadera cruz, hence Veracruz. The same happened with the Indians that he had just been given. He chose the commonest names for their baptism, not bothering himself much about the matter. However, this didn't prevent him from listening to the Mass before the baptism with great fervor. He was moved by the zeal in the eyes of the natives, despite the fact that the Mass as such was completely new to them. What he didn't realize was that for the natives, changing the names or the forms of their gods did not pose a problem. Each of their gods was known by at least 2 different names and appeared to them in different shapes. So the fact that a Spanish Virgin had been placed in the pyramid where before they had worshipped their ancient gods was something that could be overcome with faith.